Welcome to our deep dive technical analysis of EPWK Holdings Limited, a company currently facing one of the most severe stock collapses on the Nasdaq. As of November 14, 2025, EPWK closed at just 0.047, reflecting a staggering 17.5% daily drop and capping off a multi-month freefall. The looming threat of delisting and a desperate 40-for-1 reverse stock split on the horizon, the company is scrambling to regain compliance with minimum bid price requirements. In this video, we'll break down the technicals, price action, and what the future might hold for this embattled stock. Let's begin by setting the stage with a general overview and the prevailing trend. EPWK's journey over the past year has been nothing short of catastrophic. From a 52-week high of $2.55, the stock has plummeted to a low of 0.037, now scraping the very bottom of its trading range. This collapse is not just a number on a chart, it's a reflection of deep operational distress within the company's cloud sourcing platform. The current price positions EPWK at 0% of its 52-week range, signaling total capitulation and a loss of investor confidence. Such a dramatic fall is rarely seen outside of companies on the brink of extinction. Stave off delisting, EPWK has announced a 40-for-1 reverse stock split, effective November 17, 2025. This move is often seen as a last-ditch effort by companies in trouble, aiming to artificially boost the share price above the minimum required by Nasdaq. However, reverse splits rarely solve underlying problems and can sometimes accelerate declines as investor sentiment worsens. For EPWK, this maneuver underscores the gravity of its situation and the urgency to regain compliance, but it also signals to the market that deeper issues remain unresolved. EPWK's risk profile is extreme. With a beta of 0.912, the stock is highly volatile, but this volatility is now driven more by illiquidity than by market trends. The risk-reward ratio stands at a dismal 0.123, indicating almost no upside and potentially unlimited downside. Technical indicators like the ADX at 45.67 confirm the strength of the ongoing downtrend, while the Arun down at 100 and Arun up at 0 lock in the dominance of sellers. In short, EPWK is in terminal freefall, with every metric pointing to heightened risk and little hope for a rebound. November 14, EPWK saw a massive volume spike, with over 250 million shares traded. The session opened at 0.044, briefly touched 0.066, crashed to 0.042, and closed at 0.047. Such explosive volume with a volume ratio of 45.67 and growth rate of 42.1 suggests either frantic short covering or final capitulation. The on-balance volume, OBV, remains positive, hinting at trapped long positions, while negative accumulation distribution AD and Chaikin oscillator readings confirm heavy outflows. This combination is a classic volume trap where desperate buyers are lured in just before another leg down. Technical oscillators paint a picture of extreme oversold conditions. The Money Flow Index MFI at 21.32 and Relative Strength Index RSI at 29.3 both signal that the stock is deeply oversold. However, in the context of a delisting-bound shell, these readings offer little comfort. The stock's dollar volume of $11.78 million and a close nearly 96% below VWAP highlight just how far valuation has collapsed. While oversold conditions sometimes precede a bounce, in EPWK's case, the underlying fundamentals remain dire. Short-term moving averages form an iron ceiling above the current price. The SMA 5 at 0.058 and EMA 5 at 0.055 are just above the close, but longer-term averages like the SMA 50 at 0.228 and EMA 100 at $1.05 are far out of reach. This alignment of moving averages confirms a fully capitulated bear market, with every bounce attempt quickly smothered. The price is now a mere speck below all major averages, reinforcing the sense of a death march toward zero. Momentum indicators for EPWK are overwhelmingly negative. The MACD is at -0.042, with a signal line at -0.052 and a histogram barely positive at 0.0092, suggesting a faint bullish divergence. However, this is little more than a technical blip in a sea of red. Other momentum readings like Momentum 10 and TRIX 10 at -0.584 reinforce the narrative of deceleration and exhaustion. The overall momentum score at 20.13 is at an extreme, highlighting just how far the stock has fallen. Oscillator readings are at extreme lows, with RSI 14 at 29.3 and stock RSI-K at 0. Stochastic indicators across multiple timeframes are all near zero, and Williams %R at -92.27 confirms the stock is deeply oversold. Commodity Channel Index CCI at -324.23 and Shan Momentum Oscillator CMO at -41.39 further reinforce the severity of the decline. These readings collectively beg for a technical bounce, but in the context of EPWK's situation, such a move would likely be short-lived. Trend indicators like the ADX at 45.67 and Arun down at 100 confirm the overwhelming strength of the downtrend. The parabolic SAR at 0.091 acts as a distant resistance, almost irrelevant given the current price. Volatility readings, including ATR 14 at 0.28 and NATR 14 at 11.5, reflect the dying gasps of liquidity as the stock continues its descent. These metrics paint a picture of a stock in terminal decline, with little to no support from buyers. Looking at more specialized indicators, the MAMA at 0.068 and FAMA at 0.094, with MAMA below FAMA confirm the bearish outlook. The TRIX10 at minus 0.584 may be bottoming, but this is a faint signal amid overwhelming negativity. The ease of movement EOM is neutral, and the time series forecast TSF14 is flat, offering little hope for a reversal. These hidden signals suggest that even the most obscure technicals are aligned with the broader bearish narrative. Linear regression analysis further confirms the downward spiral. The slope is steep, indicating a persistent downward trend. The intercept at 0.28 and R-squared at 0.612 show a strong fit to the ongoing decline. The predicted price of 0.05, with a deviation of minus 0.003, hugs the regression line in shared misery. This statistical approach leaves little doubt about the direction of EPWK's price action. Looking ahead to the next trading session on November 17, 2025, which will be post-reverse split, the opening price is estimated to be between $1.88 and $1.92 on an adjusted basis. Pre-split, the range is 0.045 to 0.055, but the default expectation is for further downside. The reverse split may temporarily boost the share price, but without fundamental improvement, the underlying trend is likely to persist. Support and resistance analysis reveals a narrow trading range. The pivot point is at 0.052, with support at 0.042 and resistance at 0.062. The closing price of 0.047 sits just above support and below the pivot, effectively trapping the stock in a tight band. Bollinger Bands show upper at 0.091, middle at 0.07, and lower at 0.05, with the price contracting near the lower band, a classic sign of a coffin squeeze where volatility is about to erupt. Intraday trading for EPWK is characterized by a liquid bearish action. Above the pivot, any spikes toward resistance are typically short-lived and quickly reversed. Below support, the stock falls into a void with little to stop further declines. The Bollinger Band width of 0.584 and position at minus 0.7 indicate a contraction near the lower band, suggesting that volatility could soon expand, but the direction is likely downward. Using the average true range ATR14 of 0.028, the projected high for the next session is 0.076, while the projected low is 0.02. This represents an 11.5% range, suggesting that even small price movements can be significant in such a low-priced illiquid stock. Expect micro-wicks and sharp moves as volatility remains elevated. A best-case scenario, the faintly positive MACD histogram and deeply oversold RSI could spark a short-lived bounce, often called a dead cat bounce. This might push the price toward resistance at 0.062 or even the Bollinger Band middle at 0.07. However, such rallies are typically driven by short covering and rarely mark a true reversal in fundamentally distressed stocks like EPWK. More probable outcome is a continued slide. Negative accumulation distribution oscillator ADOSC and heavy outflows suggest that any bounce will be quickly sold into. If the price falls below support at 0.042, it could accelerate toward the lower Bollinger Band at 0.05 or even lower, deepening the delisting risk and investor losses. Neutral scenario would see EPWK limp around the pivot point at 0.052 with occasional volume spikes but no clear direction. This could persist until the reverse split takes effect, resetting the share price but not the underlying problems. In such a case, the stock may simply drift sideways, awaiting the next catalyst or news event. EPWK's situation is not unique. Other stocks facing delisting and reverse splits often follow a similar trajectory. These companies typically experience sharp declines, brief technical bounces, and ultimately continued erosion of value. Investors should be wary of patterns that repeat across distressed names, as the technicals often tell a similar story of risk and limited opportunity. Conclusion: EPWK is a textbook example of a reverse split zombie stock shuffling toward delisting oblivion. With a technical score of just 18.75 and oversold readings across the board, there's little to suggest a sustainable recovery. Nasdaq noncompliance and a 99% year-to-date wipeout make this a graveyard for all but the most aggressive speculators. For most investors, the message is clear: cash out and move on, as the risks far outweigh any potential reward.